The black waitress had spent years working double shifts at a small cafe, earning just enough to get by, but she never let exhaustion dull her kindness. So when she saw a frail, elderly woman in a wheelchair shivering in the rain outside, she didn't hesitate. She brought her inside, gave her food, and made her feel safe. Across the street, a billionaire was watching their every move. That billionaire was the woman's grandson, and this simple act of kindness was about to open doors she never imagined possible. The rain came down in relentless sheets, drumming against the pavement of Harrison Street, turning the cracked sidewalk into a slick, uneven mess. Street lights flickered, their dim glow barely illuminating the worn-down buildings that lined the street. It was late, past 11 p.m., and the cafe was supposed to be closing, but Maya Rodriguez had never been the type to turn someone away, not when they needed help, not when the world had already done enough to kick them down. She was wiping down the counter, her olive-toned skin damp with sweat after a grueling 12-hour shift, when she noticed the small figure outside. An elderly woman hunched over in a battered wheelchair, her silver hair plastered to her forehead, a tattered shawl barely shielding her from the cold. She was sitting just beyond the neon Harrison Cafe sign, hands gripping a frayed blanket that did nothing against the chill. Maya frowned, setting her rag down. She pushed open the cafe door, shivering as the wind hit her. Hey, sweetie," she called gently, crouching beside the woman. "What are you doing out here all alone?" The elderly woman flinched at first, then looked up, her hazel eyes wide, uncertain, searching. "I'm waiting for my grandson," she mumbled, her voice barely audible over the rain. Maya glanced up and down the street. No one, just the dim glow of a pawn shop's cash for gold sign flickering across the road, the sound of tires hissing against wet asphalt. "Where is he?" she pressed, concern creeping into her voice. The woman shrugged, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. Maya exhaled, biting her lip. She'd seen too many nights like this, too many elderly folks left waiting for someone who wasn't coming. "Well, you can't stay out here, not in this mess," she offered a warm smile. "Come inside with me, okay? It's warm, and I've got something special for you." The woman hesitated for a second, but then slowly nodded. Maya gently took hold of the wheelchair's handles and pushed her inside the cafe, the warmth hitting them immediately, the scent of buttered toast and fresh coffee wrapping around them like a blanket. She led her to a booth near the radiator, draping a fresh towel over her shoulders before crouching to meet her eyes. "I'm Maya," she said, flashing another grin. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The woman sniffed, her fingers curling around the edge of the blanket. "Eleanor." Maya nodded approvingly. "That's a beautiful name. You hungry?" She nodded hesitantly. Maya didn't wait for her to say more. She was already moving toward the kitchen, pulling out a fresh loaf of whole grain bread, slicing it with practiced ease. A few minutes later, she set a steaming plate in front of her, grilled cheese, golden and crisp, with a bowl of chicken noodle soup on the side. Her go-to comfort meal, the one her abuela used to make when the nights were too long and the world felt too cruel. "This one's on me," she said, tucking a napkin into Eleanor's lap. Eleanor's hazel eyes widened as she took her first bite, the cheese stretching in long, gooey strings. "This is the best thing I've had in ages," she murmured, her voice laced with something close to wonder. Maya chuckled, watching as she savored the sandwich. "Good food makes everything better," she said lightly, but inside she felt the familiar ache, the one that came when she saw someone so vulnerable, so small, already carrying the weight of the world. What she didn't know was that someone was watching. Across the street, a sleek black Tesla sat idle in the shadows, its tinted windows reflecting the cafe's neon glow. Inside, Marcus Wellington sat in silence, his sharp blue eyes locked onto the scene unfolding before him. At 34, Marcus was a man who had built his empire on control, precision, ruthlessness. Wellington Tech was the beating heart of Denver's innovation district, a billion-dollar machine that ran on efficiency, not sentiment. And Marcus, its CEO, had spent years ensuring that nothing, no person, no emotion, no weakness, could interfere with that. Yet here he was, watching, listening, thinking. Eleanor was his grandmother, and that woman, that black waitress in a cheap apron in a rundown cafe, was feeding his grandmother for free. Marcus's jaw tightened. He had been delayed on a conference call, an emergency with his investors in Tokyo, and had told Eleanor to wait by the cafe for just a few minutes. He hadn't expected this. He reached for his phone, dialing quickly. "Sophia," he said when his assistant picked up. "Get down to Harrison Cafe. No suits, no heels. I need you there in 20 minutes. There was a pause. "Sir." Marcus's grip on the phone tightened. "Find out everything you can about the woman who just fed my grandmother." Then he hung up. Inside the cafe, Eleanor was laughing for the first time all night, her weathered hands warm around the soup bowl, broth stains on her chin. Maya wiped it away with a napkin, shaking her head. "Messy eater, huh?" Across the street, Marcus watched, his expression unreadable, his mind already working, already calculating. Because he didn't believe in kindness, he believed in debts. And whether she realized it or not, Maya Rodriguez had just put him in hers. Maya wiped her hands on her apron, glancing toward the cafe window as the rain kept falling, streaking down the glass in uneven trails. Eleanor was finishing the last spoonful of her soup, her hands steady now, no longer trembling. Her face had lost that weary tightness, that guarded look that people her age shouldn't have to wear. She felt a small swell of satisfaction. One more person, one more moment of kindness. That was enough for her. Then the door swung open. The cold air rushed in first, followed by a woman in jeans and a hoodie, dark hair tucked beneath a faded Broncos cap. She was out of place in the cafe, not because of what she wore, but because of the way she carried herself. Sharp, calculated, assessing everything in a single glance. Maya had worked in this business long enough to recognize someone who wasn't here for the coffee. The woman's gaze landed on Eleanor immediately. She softened her expression, crouching beside the elderly woman. "Hey, Mrs. Wellington, time to go," she said lightly, though something about her tone was off. Too smooth, too rehearsed. Eleanor frowned, setting down her spoon. "But I haven't finished my tea." The woman, Sophia, though Maya didn't know her name yet, tilted her head with a practiced smile. "You can take it with you. Your ride's waiting." Maya's instincts flared. She had seen too many people dismissed, erased, shuffled off without a second thought. Too many moments where someone like her wasn't expected to ask questions. But she always did. She folded her arms, studying the woman carefully. "You know her?" The woman's smile didn't falter, but her posture shifted, a subtle tightening of the shoulders, the barest flicker of hesitation. "Yeah," she said smoothly. "I'm her caregiver." Maya didn't blink. She turned to Eleanor. "That true, sweetheart?" Eleanor hesitated just a second too long. Sophia's jaw tightened. Maya had grown up in a world where hesitation could mean everything. She knew what fear looked like, what power could do when it moved in silence. She also knew that this woman wasn't telling the whole truth. She crouched beside Eleanor, meeting her uncertain eyes. "You good, honey?" she asked, voice softer now like a shield. "You want to go with her?" Eleanor looked between them, her fingers clenched around the napkin, tiny knuckles going white. "She's here for my grandson," she mumbled. "I guess I have to." Maya didn't move. Her gut screamed at her to push further, to demand more, to make sure this elderly woman was actually safe. But she had been here before, a woman of color pressing too hard, asking too many questions, getting the wrong kind of attention. Still, she wouldn't send Eleanor away empty-handed. She walked to the counter, grabbed a chocolate chip cookie wrapped in wax paper, and slid it into Eleanor's hand. "For the road," she said. Eleanor's weathered fingers curled around it, and for the first time that night, she grinned. "Thank you, Maya. You're an angel." Maya forced a smile, but something in her chest pulled tight. She watched as Sophia wheeled Eleanor toward the door, the quiet tension between them thick enough to cut. Then, just before stepping out into the rain, Sophia glanced back. She didn't say anything. She just looked. And Maya recognized it for what it was, a warning. Across the street, the Tesla's headlights flashed as Sophia approached. The rear door swung open before she could knock, and Marcus stepped out, his broad figure framed by the glow of the cafe's neon sign. The moment Eleanor was safely inside, buckled in the back seat, Marcus turned to Sophia. "Well," Sophia exhaled, pushing back her hood. "She's sharp," she admitted. "Didn't buy the caregiver story. Almost called me out on it." Marcus's expression didn't change, but she let her go. "She didn't have a choice," Sophia said pointedly. "You know how it is, a woman of color making a scene. She would have been the one in trouble, not me." Marcus's jaw twitched, but he said nothing. Sophia folded her arms. She's not like the others, Marcus. Marcus already knew that. He had seen it. The moment Maya stepped into the rain without hesitation, the way she had spoken to Eleanor like she mattered, not like she was an inconvenience. He had watched people bend, flatter, manipulate for his money, but she hadn't even known it was his grandmother, and she had helped anyway. That made her dangerous. He opened the car door, sliding inside, his voice low. I want everything on her. Name, address, background. He fastened his seatbelt, staring straight ahead. I want it on my desk by morning. Sophia hesitated just a beat too long. Sir, by morning. He exhaled, then nodded. Understood. The Tesla pulled away from the curb, the cafe growing smaller in the rearview mirror. But Marcus wasn't thinking about the city lights or the traffic ahead. He was thinking about Maya Rodriguez and the debt he owed her. Maya trudged home that night, her sneakers soaked from the rain, the chills settling deep into her bones. The cafe's measly tips weighed lightly in her pocket, barely enough to cover rent, let alone groceries. But the memory of Eleanor's grin stayed with her. Still, something about the encounter gnawed at her, that unease creeping beneath her skin. She had seen it before, that forced, polished smile on the woman's face, the way Eleanor hesitated before answering. That wasn't just any stranger picking up an elderly woman. That was someone who knew exactly what they were doing. She climbed the stairs to her one-bedroom apartment on Colfax Avenue, where the heat barely worked and the walls were thin enough to hear her neighbor's TV blaring 3 doors down. The second she shut the door behind her, she leaned against it, rubbing a hand down her face. She had learned a long time ago not to get involved in things that weren't her business. But this felt different. This felt wrong. Before she could shake the feeling, a knock sounded at the door. Maya stiffened. No one came by at this hour. She peered through the peephole, and her stomach flipped. A man stood on the other side, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in an expensive black coat that looked like it cost more than her entire month's rent. His face was sharp, his blue eyes cold and assessing, like he had already taken her apart in his mind before she even opened the door. She didn't open it. Who is it? A pause, then a voice, deep, controlled, too controlled. Marcus Wellington. That name meant nothing to her. What do you want? She asked, keeping her hand on the lock. Another pause. To talk. Maya's gut screamed hell no, but curiosity won out. Slowly, she unlatched the door and opened it just enough to see his face clearly. He didn't belong in this building, in this part of the city, in her world. I don't know you, she said flatly. His expression didn't change. No, but you know my grandmother. Maya's pulse skipped. She studied him carefully now, the way his presence filled the tiny doorway, the way his coat was still damp from the rain, but his shoes were spotless. This was money, power, the kind that could break people without ever lifting a hand. Her grip tightened on the door frame. Eleanor, she said slowly. You're her grandson. His nod was barely perceptible. I was across the street last night. The chill that had settled in her bones turned sharp. You were watching? I was. Maya exhaled through her nose. So what? You here to complain that I fed your grandmother? No. Marcus's gaze flickered, unreadable. I'm here because I don't believe in charity, but I do believe in paying debts. And then, without waiting for her response, he pulled an envelope from his coat and placed it on her rickety kitchen table. Maya didn't move. Slowly, she glanced at the envelope. Thick, expensive, the kind of paper that had weight, the kind of paper that meant whatever was inside wasn't small. She swallowed. What is that? A job offer. Maya's brain stalled. She blinked up at him. What? Marcus tilted his head slightly, as if gauging how much patience he was willing to grant her. A job at Wellington Tech, 6 figures. Benefits. The works. Maya let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. You think I want to work for some rich white guy who thinks handing out a check makes us even? Marcus didn't flinch. I don't think you want charity, Maya. That's why I'm not offering it. Her name in his mouth made something tighten in her chest. She folded her arms. You don't even know me. I know enough. His voice was steady, unshakable, like a man who never asked, only decided. I know you gave my grandmother food without expecting anything in return. I know you didn't treat her like an inconvenience. I know that's rare. Maya swallowed hard, trying to ignore the way his words knocked something loose in her ribs. She looked back at the envelope, at the ridiculous weight of it sitting on her table. And what exactly would I be doing at Wellington Tech? Making coffee? Marcus's mouth twitched, something like amusement flickering across his face before it vanished. No, you'd be working directly with me, handling negotiations, public relations. You're good with people. I need someone like that. Maya snorted. You don't need me. You've got a company full of Ivy League grads who'd slit each other's throats for a job like that. Marcus's expression finally shifted, just slightly. That's exactly why I don't trust them. Silence stretched between them, heavy, waiting. Maya could feel the weight of his offer pressing against her, curling around the edges of her pride, her exhaustion, her stubborn refusal to be bought. But 6 figures. 6 figures meant no more late rent, no more living paycheck to paycheck, no more nights wondering how she'd stretch her last $20. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. Never owe these people anything, Mija. You know they don't give without taking. Her jaw clenched. Why me? Marcus held her gaze, and for the first time, something in his eyes flickered. Because you saw my grandmother, he said, voice lower now, like it almost cost him something to say. Not my money, not my name. You saw her. Maya's throat tightened. She looked at the envelope one last time, then slowly picked it up. I'll think about it, she murmured. Marcus studied her for a long moment, then gave a curt nod. Good. And then, without another word, he turned and left. Maya stood there long after the door shut, the weight of the envelope in her hands feeling heavier than it should. Because she already knew, she wasn't just thinking about it. She was going to say yes. The first day at Wellington Tech felt like stepping into another world, a world where everything gleamed too bright, where money smelled like freshly polished steel and the air was thick with power. Maya walked into the towering glass building in a department store blazer and thrifted heels, feeling every pair of eyes snap toward her the moment she crossed the lobby. It wasn't the kind of attention she was used to. It wasn't curiosity. It was evaluation, calculation, judgment. She kept her head high, shoulders squared. She had worked in places where people underestimated her before. She knew how to hold her ground. Marcus was waiting in his office, a sprawling, sleek space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the mountains, a desk so pristine it looked more like an art piece than something actually used for work. He didn't look up when she walked in, just gestured toward the chair across from him. You're late. Maya arched a brow, sitting. By 2 minutes. Marcus finally looked at her, blue eyes sharp. That's 2 minutes I don't get back. Maya exhaled, shaking her head. She had barely been here 5 seconds, and he was already starting. Look, you want me here or not? He leaned back, studying her. That remains to be seen. Before she could fire back, the glass door opened, and Sophia walked in, a tablet in hand, her expression unreadable. Maya didn't miss the way the woman's gaze flickered over her, like she was assessing whether or not she belonged here. Spoiler alert, she had already decided she didn't. Ms. Rodriguez, Sophia said smoothly. Welcome to Wellington Tech. Maya met her gaze head-on, a slow smile curling her lips. Oh, we're doing last names? All right. Good to see you again, Ms. Chun. Something in Sophia's eyes flickered, just for a second, before she turned her attention back to Marcus. I've prepared the reports for the upcoming negotiations with the Meridian Group. She handed him the tablet, barely sparing Maya another glance. Would you like me to brief her on company protocols? Marcus didn't even look up. No, I will. Maya wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a warning. Sophia only nodded, but before she left, she hesitated just slightly at the door, glancing back at Maya once more. Good luck, she murmured. Maya tilted her head. The way she said it didn't sound like encouragement. It sounded like a warning. She didn't have much time to think about it before Marcus was already diving into work. No small talk, no settling in. He pulled up a file, sliding it across the table. Meridian Group, he said. They want to push through a contract that would cut labor costs by outsourcing jobs overseas. That means layoffs. Thousands. Maya skimmed the file, her stomach turning. And you want me to what? Convince them not to? Marcus's gaze didn't waver. I want you to do what you do best. Read people. Maya sat back, crossing her arms. So let me get this straight. You brought me in because you think I can what? Charm them into getting these billionaires to grow a conscience? Marcus didn't blink. No, I brought you in because I think you understand something they don't. Maya narrowed her eyes. And what's that? He leaned forward slightly. That people who have nothing to lose fight the hardest. The words hit something deep in her ribs, something unspoken but true. She stared at him for a long moment, then exhaled, shaking her head. You know, you talk in riddles a lot for someone who runs a tech empire. For the first time, the corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. And then, just like that, the moment passed. Meeting's at noon, he said, standing. Try not to be late. Maya rolled her eyes, but didn't argue. She had a job to do. The conference room was colder than the rest of the building, all steel and glass, like it had been designed to make people uncomfortable. Maya sat beside Marcus at the long mahogany table, facing 3 men in tailored suits, each one radiating the kind of confidence that came from knowing they could buy and sell entire lives with a single stroke of a pen. The leader of the group, Richard Blackstone, 60, white hair slicked back like old money arrogance, was a birthright. Barely even looked at her. Maya had dealt with men like him before, the ones who only saw value in people who looked like them. She didn't let it show. Marcus opened the conversation, cutting straight to the point. You want to move production to Southeast Asia. You say it'll save costs, increase efficiency. He paused. I say it'll destroy a workforce that's built this company's infrastructure for over a decade. Blackstone gave a slow, thin-lipped smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. You misunderstand, Marcus. It's not personal. It's just business. Maya's fingers curled beneath the table. Not personal. She had heard that phrase too many times in her life. When her landlord raised rent overnight because developers wanted to gentrify the neighborhood. When her mother lost her job at the factory because they found cheaper labor overseas. When companies like this shut down communities and called it strategy. She smiled, but there was steel in it. Funny, she said, tilting her head, because it's always just business until it's your job on the line. Blackstone's eyes snapped to her for the first time. Marcus didn't interrupt, he just watched. Blackstone exhaled sharply through his nose, like he had better things to do than entertain the help. And you are? Maya didn't blink. Maya Rodriguez, Wellington Tech. He gave her a once-over, and she saw the exact moment he dismissed her. She didn't care. She had been underestimated before. Blackstone leaned back in his chair, waving a hand. Look, sweetheart, I get it. You think we're the villains here. But this is about numbers. It's about what makes the most sense. Sweetheart. Maya's jaw locked. She leaned forward, matching his posture. All right, she said coolly. Let's talk numbers. She slid a document across the table. This is a breakdown of what happens when you offshore production. Sure, you cut costs at first. But in 3 years, when labor demands rise, your new manufacturing hub gets expensive. You'll spend millions restructuring, rehiring, and dealing with PR disasters when the headlines read, American workers betrayed for profit. She tapped the paper. That's not a guess. That's market analysis. Blackstone glanced at the file, but didn't touch it. Maya held his gaze, didn't blink, didn't flinch. You can make the smart choice now, she said, voice calm, deadly. Or you can explain to your investors why your short-term gains just cost them their long-term returns. Silence. Then, finally, Blackstone exhaled, picked up the paper, scanned it. Marcus didn't smile, but Maya could feel the shift in the room. She had just changed the game. Blackstone set the document down, his expression unreadable. We'll revisit the proposal. Marcus nodded. See that you do. The meeting ended shortly after. As Blackstone and his associates left, Maya felt the weight of Marcus's gaze on her. She turned to him. Well, Marcus studied her for a long moment, then said, I knew I hired you for a reason. Maya smirked. Damn right you did. And for the first time since she walked into Wellington Tech, she felt like she belonged. 2 months in, Maya had found her rhythm at Wellington Tech. Or at least, she thought she had. She had learned how to navigate the halls of power, how to stand her ground in a world that barely acknowledged her existence. She had faced down Richard Blackstone and walked out victorious. She had proved to Marcus, and to herself, that she wasn't just here as a symbolic gesture, a corporate pet project. She was here because she belonged. But victories at the top were short-lived. Because now the company was in trouble. Maya was in trouble, and someone had just set her up to take the fall. She had just come back from a client meeting when Sophia caught her in the hallway. We have a problem, she said, her tone sharp, urgent. Maya frowned. Define problem. Sophia didn't answer. She just handed Maya a printed email. Maya's stomach sank the second she saw the contents. It was a company report, classified financial data. It had been leaked to the press, and the email forwarding it had Maya's name on it. The words blurred. The air in the room shifted, turned dense, heavy. She forced herself to breathe. This isn't mine. I know, Sophia said. But someone wants it to be. Maya's pulse thrummed in her ears. She had been in enough situations like this to know how fast they spiraled. A woman of color in a powerful white space didn't get the benefit of the doubt. She didn't get to be innocent until proven guilty. She was guilty the second they said she was. She gripped the paper, scanning it again. Who else has seen this? Marcus, Sophia said. And the board. Her breath hitched. The board. She had barely clawed her way into this company, and now they were about to rip her out. Marcus's office was colder than usual, or maybe it was just the way he was looking at her. His hands were clasped on his desk, his expression unreadable, but his eyes, those sharp blue eyes, were studying her, weighing her. Maya felt something clench in her chest. Tell me I wasn't wrong, he said, low, controlled. Maya slammed the email onto his desk. This isn't me. Marcus didn't look at the paper. He didn't need to. I want to believe that, he said, voice steady. But this is a serious leak, Maya. Millions in exposure, stock drops, investigations. You understand how bad this is. Maya leaned forward, hands planted on his desk. I understand perfectly. I also understand that whoever did this knows exactly what they're doing. I was the easy target, right? The outsider, the woman of color with too much confidence. Who's going to believe me over some executive who's been here for 10 years? Marcus didn't flinch, but he didn't disagree either. The silence stretched too long. Maya's nails dug into her palms. Do you think I did this? Marcus held her gaze. No. The breath she had been holding finally released. But he continued, the board does. Maya swore under her breath, pacing. She could feel the noose tightening. So what happens now? She asked, forcing the words out. Marcus exhaled, rubbing a hand over his jaw. We find the real leak. Maya froze. We? Not you, not me, we? For the first time since she walked in, the ice in her chest cracked. Marcus stood, slipping his suit jacket back on. Sophia is already running a trace on the email source, but it was routed through an external server. Someone covered their tracks well. He met her gaze. We'll have to be smarter. Maya crossed her arms, leveling him with a look. And what if we don't find them in time? What if the board decides to cut me loose? Marcus's jaw tightened. Then we make them regret it. Maya studied him. Marcus Wellington was not the kind of man who made promises lightly. But for the first time, she believed him. And whoever had set her up, they were about to find out exactly what kind of fight they had just started. The truth unraveled faster than they expected. Maya and Sophia worked through the night, combing through server logs, tracing digital breadcrumbs. Whoever had framed her had been careful, but not careful enough. The leak had been routed through a secondary account, one tied to David Morrison, a senior executive with 10 years at Wellington Tech and a reputation for keeping his hands clean while letting others do his dirty work. By morning, they had enough evidence to bury him. Maya stormed into the boardroom before they could summon her like a criminal. The air was thick with tension, dozens of polished, powerful men in tailored suits staring her down like she was already gone. Marcus sat at the head of the table, unreadable. Ms. Rodriguez, one of the board members, an older man with a thin-lipped smirk, gestured to the empty seat across from them. I assume you know why you're here. Maya didn't sit. She never planned to. I do, she said, voice steady. And I assume you all know you're about to make a very expensive mistake. A flicker of amusement crossed Marcus's face, but he didn't interfere. Ms. Rodriguez, the board member started, but she cut him off. I was an easy target, right? She said, pacing. The new hire, the outsider, the one you could pin this on and sweep under the rug. She stopped, placing a thick folder on the table. Except you picked the wrong one. She slid the folder toward them. Silence stretched as they skimmed the documents, their expressions shifting from dismissive to something closer to alarm. David Morrison sat 2 seats down, his face paling by the second. These are traced emails, Maya continued. Bank transfers, call logs with reporters. All of them linked to Morrison, not me. She crossed her arms. And before you ask, yes, our legal team already has copies. And so does the press. So if you want to talk about damage control, I'd start there. A murmur swept through the room. Morrison shot to his feet, his voice a little too sharp, too desperate. This is ridiculous. She's bluffing. Maya turned to Marcus, lifting a brow. Am I? Marcus finally spoke, his voice as sharp as cut glass. No, she's not. The words landed like a blow. Morrison's mouth snapped shut. Marcus stood, adjusting his cufflinks. Effective immediately, David Morrison is terminated. Full legal action will be pursued. He let the weight of his words settle before turning his attention to the rest of the room. And if anyone else in this company thinks they can play the same game, let this serve as a warning. The silence that followed was absolute. Maya didn't smile. She didn't need to. She had won. 2 weeks later, she stood beside Marcus at Eleanor's 80th birthday celebration. The elderly woman grinned up at her from her wheelchair, holding a bouquet of roses like it was the greatest prize in the world. I told you that night you were an angel, Eleanor said, eyes bright with joy. Maya laughed, gently squeezing her hand. Never doubted it for a second. Marcus watched them, his usual cool exterior softer somehow. You did good, Rodriguez, he said. She smirked. Damn right I did. Eleanor glanced between them. Are you two going to hug or something? Marcus sighed. Absolutely not. Maya rolled her eyes. God, no. Eleanor just grinned. For the first time in a long time, Maya felt like she had built something real, something that mattered. And she wasn't done yet. Years later, Maya Rodriguez sat in the executive office of Wellington Tech, her name now engraved on the door as Vice President of Corporate Strategy. What had started as a job, a challenge, had become a mission. Under her leadership, the company expanded its ethical labor initiatives, launched mentorship programs, and built partnerships with minority-owned businesses. Across town, a new community center bore the name Rodriguez Wellington Foundation, funding education and job opportunities for underserved youth. And at its ribbon-cutting ceremony, Eleanor, now 85 and still sharp as ever, stood beside her, grinning like the woman who once got a free meal in a café because kindness was the kind of investment that always paid off. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons.